Hey, welcome to episode of Chad's Beer Podcast. Sorry, I can't think of a more clever name. So today we're talking with Rich of End of the Day Beer Review. How
Hello.
you going? How you doing, man?
Good to be here.
In case you missed it, Rich and I just reviewed the 2019 Bourbon County. I'll have a link down there, I'm sure. And it's funny because when we were doing the show, I was saying like this isn't cloying, but like now that this is warmed up. I mean, not quite room temperature, but it's definitely pretty warm. Now it
Mhm.
is starting to get a little cloying. I'm just going to empty this bottle. Hey, I got a little bit of a head there.
Yeah, you pour it hard, you get a little bit.
Yeah.
But it is really, I mean, it's not that it's undercarbonated, but the carbonation is definitely not as aggressive as I've seen in some other beers.
Your channel, and in the review that we just did, like you're like this Bourbon County like whisperer or almost like you know, like you're a Bourbon County enthusiast and collector for sure.
Oh
Is that
yeah.
safe to say?
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, there's about 12 boxes of Bourbon County behind the bar right now. That I mean, I've been collecting since I think my oldest right now are 16s, and I'm also
Okay.
building two 10-year verticals. So, like I have everything building up to that. So, but yeah, I Bourbon County is what got me into sort of before Bourbon County went to Anheuser-Busch. That's sort of what got me into the craft beer more than anything. Was a tasting that I did. In New York City, they did a beer tasting, and it was the first year they did the coffee barley wine, and that blew me away. So I have been a devout follower since then. So yeah, I think that was 16. No, 16. No, it had to be 14. I think it was 14 that we went to that.
When did
Um,
they switch to these big 500 ml bottles?
you
Because I
know,
remember
it's
always those 12-ounce bottles.
I remember I had 2014 bottles and I have pictures of them, and they're the small 12 ounces. And then 2016, they were the larger bottles. Because I remember I initially with Bourbon County had sticker shock because I went to buy a 4-pack and the guy was like $64. And I was like, really? And so I still bought it, but it was one of those things where I didn't realize because I had it at a tasting, the price on these things. So, but I think it was, yeah, I want to say it was like, I want to say 14 was the year that I had the smaller bottles.
That sounds like the freaking beer museums around here. So
Mm,
I'm in Sanford, Florida. It's about 20 miles north west of Orlando. It's about halfway
mhm.
between Orlando and Daytona Beach.
Okay.
And there's a liquor chain called Pat's, and they have a store like within walking distance of my house. And they have this giant walk-in cooler, and it's like the size of my living room. And they have old Bourbon County bottles in there, but they also have like old stuff that's not even supposed to be aged, like um the brewery Saison Brew, like it says 2016 in big letters right on the label. And I always try to like negotiate with them, like, can you like discount this a little? Because it's really old. And um they always
It's
like either they play dumb or they are dumb because they're like, oh no, beer's like wine, it just gets better as it ages. I'm like, no, it doesn't.
yeah, that's really not true with all
Yeah.
of them.
Maybe
But
like certain stuff like this, maybe, but and there's another store up in Orange City called Kenny's which is actually where I got this one from. And they have like these Dogfish Head beers they don't even make anymore, like Raisin the Extra or whatever, you know, and
mhm.
still full price. Have like these three fountain beers. They want like 50 something bottles for 50 something dollars for them. You get the exact same thing at Total Wine for like 20 or 30, you
Yeah,
know.
that's the nice thing. Like, I have 3 distributors within about 4 miles of my house, so they normally have the Bourbon Counties and all the variants. But the one distributor this year was like, "Oh yeah, we had another chain, and none of this stuff sold, and they had stuff that I had never seen before." So I was able to get it. But like around me, by the time we get to July, they start discounting the variants at some of these places. So like you can get a $25 variant for $15.99, which,
Oh, that's
you
nice.
know, like that's a deal.
Yeah.
I mean, I one of my cousin was actually in Queens. He's like, hey, they have the cola and it's only $15 a bottle. And I was like, buy it all
Yeah.
because I thought that was such a great beer. Um, but yeah, it's sort of interesting when you find those really super old ones that aren't supposed to be aged. I was at a place, yeah, like okay, so looking
That's
at
the
that,
cola,
the
the red and
cola is one of my all-time favorite beers ever, and right next to it is the Sir Isaac Stout, which is
the purple
outstanding.
one.
Yeah, the purple one is great. The red and blue one is great. You know, the Earl Grey one, which is the gray one with the 2020 label on it to the left of the purple
Okay.
one, it's good, but it tastes like Earl Grey tea. And if you're not into that, you're not going to be into that particular beer.
What is the
The
coffee one?
I
This
like the coffee, although a lot of people, were sort of they thought the coffee was a little bit too muted within it. I think they used the cold brew coffee into that. So I mean, I think it's held up quite nicely. This
yeah.
year's variants, these two that are here on the right of the screen, the Bananas Foster, it was okay. The Backyard Stout was objectively terrible. Um, no, I mean, like there was I sat here, you see, and they've got some gold there. So
Knob
the
Creek.
this one, the one in the middle, the gray tube, I bought
Mhm.
a bunch of them. You will love this is fantastic, the gray one. It is, all Eagle Rare
Mhm.
and it drinks I think it was 16%. It was one of the higher ABVs this year, and you could not taste the alcohol in it. It was a pleasure to drink. And
That one's like they usually want like 40 something bucks for it most places.
yeah, that's what they cost here. The Angel's Envy was very good, but there was a certain, it's aged in a port barrel. So if you're a wine person, you're going to get a kick out of that. It's really pretty solid. So, but it's so funny. You know what's missing off that shelf? I did not see one 2022.
Mhm.
And I feel like the 2022 was sort of like it sort of popped up and surprised everybody because it was just so damn good.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the Bourbon County really sort of got me into it, and then I don't know, I guess I fell into a lot of local breweries wherever I would go on like a trip, and so and then I have the bar, which it's a set made for beer reviews,
Mhm.
so you just had to do it, but. Yeah, you're right about the 2019. As it's warming up, it's definitely getting sweeter.
Yeah, it's approaching cloying. Maybe it is. That's why I actually got a bottle of water right here. So I'm like, it's
Yeah,
like
this
caramel
is not a
extract in my
Wednesday
tongue.
night beer. It's definitely not a Wednesday night beer because,
Yeah.
not what a
Well,
work day ahead.
it's funny because I take Tuesdays and Wednesdays off because of the way my work is.
Mhm.
Most people work Monday through Friday, but to me, I take Tuesdays and Wednesdays off because it's the slowest day of the week. I don't really make that much money on those days. So, although I might switch it to Wednesdays and Thursdays because the landscapers come on Tuesdays and they're here for hours. And like, I'm trying to relax and I got stuff to do or like edit
Mhm.
videos or something. And then so I have to the landscapers come and I got to put these headphones on just so I can't hear the lawnmowers and leaf blowers and all that stuff.
I have that problem on Tuesdays during the summertime.
Mm,
You hear them all come in and everybody's working. My neighborhood is a small engine haven. They're just running nonstop during the
yeah.
summertime. But Tuesdays and Fridays are the two worst days by me for that stuff. So
Yeah, it's funny.
yeah,
We're almost 10 minutes into the podcast, and like I never do this. I probably should. Is we should like start the beginning at the beginning. Can you kind of give the viewers, if they don't know who you are, kind of give like a breakdown of like who you are, where you're from,
sure.
what you do, all that stuff?
So I'm rich. I am actually
Oh, you're really
professionally.
wealthy?
So I wish I was really wealthy. That would be really nice. No, I'm a school teacher.
Richard.
So yeah, I teach ninth and 11th grade English in New York. I live on Long Island, which is about 40 miles away from New York City. And we're in this nice little pocket of weather where we never get the crazy snow that upstate New York gets. We tend to be in like this little warm envelope by the beach. And during the summertime, Long Island is, all beach all the time. So, but yes, no, I wish I was wealthy, but I am but a public school teacher. So I've been doing that for 26 years now. So,
Wow.
I'm well into my career as I'm reminded by my kids. So
That's funny because I don't know if you know this, but like that's what I wanted to do. And so I'll give you like a real quick history on me. So like I'm from Schenectady, New York, which is
mhm,
right next to Albany. Albany's the capital of New York. It's about 3 hours north of the city.
yeah,
Um, and then so I was in the Navy for when I was from 24 to my early 30s. I forget the exact time. And then when I got off active duty, I moved back to Albany. I had my own apartment. I was going to school at SUNY Albany or University of Albany because I
great
wanted
school.
to be an English teacher. And I
Hmm.
actually majored in English. And I got my bachelor's degree in English, although I already had credits from my associate's degree from my pre-Navy years. It's a whole nother story. But anyway, so part of like when you major in English and minor in education is like you do a lot of student teaching. And like
Hmm.
I was actually there like boots on the ground or whatever. And I realized, oh, I hate this. I don't want to do this. Like this isn't anything like the movies. This isn't like Michelle Pfeiffer and
No, no,
what was that movie? Dangerous Minds.
yeah, Dangerous Minds. No, and it's not like Dead Poet Society, which I've heard a few English teachers say like, oh, that's what inspired me. Don't I mean I want to make it clear, I love my job. It's awesome. And I have a lot of fun with it, and we do some crazy stuff in my classes. But it's I find that you either, as soon as you student teach, it's either like the greatest thing in the world, or you're like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? And
Yeah.
I mean, I've had student teachers who I had one student teacher, he came in for 3 days, and on day 4, he was going to get up and teach the first day. And I came in, and in my mailbox were all the books that I had given him and a note that just said, I can't. And that was it. And I never saw the guy again. So, I mean, like it is very much like, some people love, I mean, I went to school thinking I was going to be a lawyer. And, when I started to look into that profession, I was like, yeah, that's not for me at all.
I briefly considered that too.
Mm. My wife is an attorney, and I mean, she is a pit bull of an attorney when she gets going, but I could not do her job. And I
What
mean, and
kind
she
of
says the same thing about that. She's like, I couldn't deal with being a high school teacher. And I'm a high school teacher in the town I live in, so I encounter my students all the time.
at the
No.
grocery store and
Well, I mean, in all honesty, I've encountered my students in the grocery store, in Penn Station. I heard my name yelled across a park in Paris once. I did the math. I think over the course of my career, I've had like 26 or 2,700 students so far, and they
wow.
are everywhere. Everywhere. This was the first vacation I was in California that I didn't run into a former student.
Wow.
First vacation I can remember. So, but it's a great gig. Like, I don't want to, like dissuade people, like, but it's an acquired taste. You either love it or you don't. And that's
Yeah.
really all there is to it. So,
Yeah. When I was in college for doing what you do is like they were saying like we have way too many English teachers. We need science and math. Can you teach science and math? And I'm like, no, that's why I want to go into English. Like,
it's funny though, because now with the way things are going, like in my English class, we do robotics. In my English class, we do coding, we do vlogging, we do video making. Like there's so much technology, and we read a lot of science fiction, and we jump into a lot of science. It's like we read Andy Weir's The Martian, and the kids do a ton of science with that. So it's gotten to be where like everything crosses over. with the curriculum, especially New York is really sort of like expanding on that whole idea, like everything, because it's true, everything is related. So, if you can bring that in and let the kids see it, it really helps them out as they move forward into college. So, and we've gone from talking about beer to talking about the state of education.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a podcast. We can talk about anything. I mean,
No, it's funny. It's just that, how careers always come back into, and, there's so much part of a person's identity and what they do and why they do what they do. So, I just always
yeah.
find it funny.
If I was a social studies teacher, do they still call it social studies?
They do. They
I was gonna
do.
say, if I was a social studies teacher right now, I'd make all the kids watch The Day After and Threads. Did you ever see those movies?
Mm, I have seen those movies and I have talked about them in my classes. I have shown them parts of The Day After when we talk about Cold War related books. And Threads is the harsher of the two movies, I
Yeah.
think. But and I mean, I didn't see Threads when it came out. I saw it years later on YouTube.
I
But
just
I
saw it a
mean,
couple weeks ago for the first time.
that's a brutal film.
It
And I
is,
mean,
yeah.
the day after scared the crap out of me when I saw it as a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old back in the day. I remember that movie just terrifying me. So, but yeah, it actually does come up when we start talking about Cold War stuff.
Yeah.
It's such a good movie. It really is such a good movie. And proof that Steve Gutenberg could actually do a serious role.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's funny because I just watched both of those movies like a week or two ago for the first time. I never saw them when I was a kid. I don't ever seen that sitcom, The Goldbergs. They had an
mhm.
episode where it's like when Adam is in high school and like the entire like I think the actual title of the show is called The Day After or something like that. And like the principal actually gets on a loudspeaker and says, "Do not watch The Day After. You will be scared to death." And like
And
I always remember like other kids tell me about it, and like I it's not like I was like raised like Mormon or Jehovah's Witness or something like that. People who are like really repressed or not allowed to like watch TV or movies or anything like that. Like I was, but there's like so much stuff that like I just never saw until I became an adult. Same thing with music too. Like I wasn't allowed to listen to like certain music. And
mm,
like I don't know if you watch Peter, the Master of Puppets. He's in
I
Denmark.
don't.
Well, he's one of the OG beer tubers. So he's in Denmark, and he goes by the Master of Puppets, which is obviously a play on Metallica's The Master of Puppets. You know,
Mhm.
I wasn't allowed to listen to like music like that when I was a kid, and I started catching up as an adult. I'm like, oh man, this stuff's great. No one,
Yeah.
I
I
can't believe
was
I
I
don't.
I
Go ahead.
remember I got in trouble in 10th grade and I got my Metallica mixtape confiscated because for a very brief window I went to a Catholic school. And then I escaped from the Catholic school and I was able to listen to whatever I wanted. But yeah, I loved 80s hair metal, Metallica, Guns N' Roses. Hate to admit it, but Poison was my first concert. But I guess I had a relatively, open-ended, like I could basically, watch or listen to whatever I wanted. And,
Yeah.
but I
Well,
do remember us
I
being
wouldn't
warned
consider
not to watch.
Metallica hair metal though, but
Well, I mean, I do it because it annoys Metallica fans, like, because in all honesty, and I have to admit this, like Metallica to me is 4 albums. Kill 'Em
the
All,
80s stuff.
Ride the
Yeah.
Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Injustice for All, and that's where I stopped. Like even the Black Album just did not do it for me. Like like
But
their
that was my
early.
first Metallica album and one of my first metal albums too.
Oh no, I remember a friend of mine gave me a tape, and immediately when I was like 14, it took me a good 2 months to save up the money for it, but I bought those 4 CDs,
Mhm.
and that was it. I was like, and then by the time they got to the Black Album, I was sort of like, they sold out. Which I mean, it's the same music, and I don't know. Did you see the Metallica concert on Netflix that's out there right now?
No,
Um,
but I'll check it out.
yeah, really interesting. And, I mean, they're still killing it, but I can't look at Metallica without Jason Newsted as the bass player. because that's who I grew up listening to Metallica as the bass player, and I'm very sort of stuck with that. So
Well, actually, Cliff Burton was the guy before
yeah, it
him.
was the original.
Yeah.
But I only got to see them and be involved with them once Newstead was in. So like
Really?
Cliff Burton was dead before I
Mm.
had actually started listening to them. So,
Yeah.
like you sort of get
Same
stuck
with
in
me.
that little groove. So, but it's funny though, because yeah, Metallica was great, but I got at least 3 days of detention because of Metallica. At least 3 days. So
Do you ever get to talk about, like, music in your classes? Or do you
we
just do, like, literature?
No, it's funny because you need some sort of hook to bring the kids into everything that you're talking about. So, we will start. Normally, I'll start with an anecdote, like, something that's going on, a song I'm listening to. And I always have music playing when the kids walk into the class. And every once in a while, they'll say something that's really, really hurtful, like, oh my God, my dad loves that song. And like, you feel like, wow, you're really old. But no, we actually, because English can reach out into so many different areas, like, we can talk about the music of the time period of whatever we're reading. We can talk about, how it's had an influence and bring us up to this. The other day we had a deep and heated 5-minute conversation on the Gilmore Girls,
Okay.
which I was surprisingly knowledgeable about, and we were able to go back and forth. So yeah, I find as a teacher, the more you know about, as much as you can know about everything helps, because you never know what the angle is that's going to let you reach that kid that's in your class. So, I mean, I'm also a major Deadhead. Like, I love the Grateful Dead, which an acquired taste. Some people love them, some people hate them. Um, and I have a couple of kids in class who are Deadheads, so like, they can come in with the music playing and have a conversation about it. I think I was playing Tom Petty the other day, and one of the kids were like, "Oh, I think I've heard that before." And it was like, American Girl. And I was like, how do you think you've heard that song? That song's played all the time.
Yeah.
Um, but no, we talk about a lot of different stuff. And it's sort of the nice thing about English is that it lets you talk about everything that you want to, because you have to set context.
Yeah.
So
Um, yeah, so, like, it's funny because you mentioned, Kyle from, No Hype Beer Reviews. I think he's also a high school teacher. I don't know what subject he teaches. I didn't ask him. I probably should have.
I think he's social studies, but I'm speculating there. Like, I feel like we've had, on YouTube comments, we've gone back and forth with that. And I think he might be social studies. But yeah, he's in upstate New York. So
Yeah. I was gonna say, you're the first guest so far that has all their hair and no facial hair.
I'm holding on to. I've hit 50 now, so I'm hoping desperately that the hair is going to hold on for a while longer. And the facial hair, man, I got to tell you, it's too much work. And my wife hates it. So
Yeah.
like, she is not a mustache and beard lady. So, like, there's no point in
Oh,
me.
I mean, if you got a full head of hair, all is forgiven. Like, and I'm not even like a real beard guy. Like, I just grew this last summer because I was like so sick of my hair. I'm like, screw this. I just got rid of it, and I'm just like, I'm
Mhm.
just gonna. All right, so if I can't do hair up here, I'm gonna do hair down here at least.
Yeah,
And so this is still a work in progress. You know,
it's
with
more work
blank
than
spots. It's
I
it's gonna
can't
take
go
a
a day
while.
without shaving, man. I don't know how you do it, because like I get up in the morning and one of the first two things I do, coffee and shave. And it's been like that since high school. Like, and the thing is, the other problem is I used to be a redhead, so like my beard will grow in a nice rusty red color, and like there's just too much explaining that needs to happen at that point. Like, I used to be a
Yeah,
redhead, so no, I'm hoping to hang on to what I have. So I
yeah.
really am.
I hope
So
people, I hope nobody's like tuned out by now because like we haven't really been talking beer and it's supposed to be a beer podcast. So we'll kind of get back to beer.
okay.
So you're in Long Island. Were you born and raised in Long Island?
I was born in the Bronx.
Mhm.
I lived in the Bronx, Edgewater Park, which is right near the Throgs Neck Bridge for anybody who's in New York. I lived there for 6 months, and my parents brought me out to Long Island, a town called Belmore. actually the town where Lenny Bruce grew up and went to school, and one of the guys who worked on the lunar module, Debbie Gibson. All these people come from around here. And I've stayed in the area. I'm basically one town over from where I lived my whole life.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we've looked around other places, you know, thought about DC, you know, after California, thought about California, but quite honestly, like, you know, I'm sort of a Long Island person.
Yeah.
You know, I like having Manhattan 35, 40 minutes away. I like being able to get away from Manhattan with just the train ride when I want to leave it. And yeah, so you know, at this point, I think 49.5 years of my life have been on Long Island. So, you know, and,
Wow.
you know, you can hear the gross accent I have that sort of rings true of Long Island. It's
Well,
just the way
actually,
it is.
you don't have it that much. There's one of your friends that his was like way thicker, and like it sounded like he was almost like from Boston.
Oh, no,
Or
no.
he had a different friend who actually is from Boston.
You're thinking of my cousin, Fred, and his accent is 100% Brooklyn. My family, I have 14 aunts and uncles, and you know, like it's an Irish Catholic family from Brooklyn. They had a ton of kids and a ton of cousins, and my cousin has a very, very pronounced Brooklyn accent because that's where he grew up. And then he's also on Long Island, and Long Island does not help the Brooklyn accent. It just sort of hones it a little bit more, so it's a little bit more exact.
Did you ever
Yeah.
hear the Southern accent is actually the natural evolution of the British accent? That's what I've heard.
I've
Did you
actually,
ever meet a British person, ask them to do American accent, and they will 9 times out of 10 sound like either Forrest Gump or Jenny.
you know, it's funny if you go back on my channel. One of my friends is actually from Essex, and he moved over to America because he married his wife, who's an American. And when he does an American voice, he actually sounds like he sounds like a very stuffy, very waspy person from Connecticut. Like that's
Mhm.
just the way he sounds. His sister cannot do it in an American accent. She's tried. She's been in the bar also. So it's sort of interesting how the accents. You don't have like I can't place your like normally with Florida because I have family that lives down there and their accent has changed. You don't have, you know, what I think of as the typical like Floridian accent.
Yeah, most Floridian, unless they're born and raised in Florida, they don't really have much of an accent except for people on the Panhandle, because that's like close by Alabama and
Yeah.
Mississippi and Georgia. Um, just like from, but if you just go from like Ocala or Gainesville down, everybody just
Mm,
has like a pretty, they talk pretty normally. And like I'm from, I mean, I've only been living in Florida for since 2015, so coming up on 9 years, about 8.5 years. And 99% of the people that I meet with just sound normal. I mean, the accent you hear around here, it's like Puerto Rican or
mm,
Cuban. You know, you don't like white people around here just sound like they're from, Utica or something.
mm. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, there is an upstate New York accent also. You're right. It's like there's definitely a difference. It's sort of funny when you get into it because I don't notice my accent until I talk to people who don't have it. And then I
mhm.
have friends who are up in Ohio and they're the ones who point out my accent the most. So,
Yeah,
and
there's like certain words too, like I have two channels because I have like this channel and I have my other channel, GigTube, which is all about gig work like DoorDash, Uber, Amazon, Instacart, stuff like that. And one of the other gig tubers is from New Jersey, and she talks very normally, but like there's always this one word. Anybody from New Jersey, and like I mean, you're so close to New Jersey. I guarantee if you hear this word, like you'll know that person's from Jersey. It's the word daughter, except they always pronounce it daughter, like
mm,
my daughter.
yeah, yeah. For me, where I give myself away every time is when I talk about the city. If I say Manhattan, my
Mhm.
friends from Ohio make fun of me. They're like Manhattan, like they out and out mock it because they're like that just gives you away as a New Yorker.
Yeah.
So it's funny. I was in London like years ago, and we were pretending that we weren't American. We told the cab driver we were Canadian, and he was like, "You're not Canadian." He's like, "You're from New York." He's like, and you know what? Not only are you from New York, you're from Queens. And I was like, damn it, he got so close
Yeah.
based on that accent. So, but yeah, I know. I do know it pops up from time to time. So
Well, anyways, what I was gonna say a few minutes ago is that, we're 30 minutes into the show. We didn't really talk about beer that much yet. So how did you get into beer?
okay, so there's two things. One is ridiculous. I am not a sports fan, and I was looking for something that I could talk to other. I have a child. I was looking for something I could talk to the other dads about, and so I was like, you know what? I'm going to jump into craft beer, learn everything I can about it, because you can always have a conversation about that if I can't have a conversation about football or soccer or whatever sport they're into. So that was one sort of, reason. The other reason that I got into it is I went to a tasting in New York City. And quite frankly, like I had been in college, more of a cider person. I was never a beer guy, which is why, like, just the other day, I did a review on our channel of a Bud Light. It was my first Bud Light. I'm 50 years old. And it was my
Really?
first one. Well, that's
Wow.
why when we were talking about the other review, I was like, oh, Pabst, I've never tried that. So, like, I've missed some of the big, like macro beers.
Mhm.
But then once I went to that tasting, I was like, oh my God, there's so much here. Um, I think this is something I could become really interested in. And that was also the night that I found Bourbon County. They had a special tasting room that we got into. My friend was with me. He has a wonderful British accent, and the bartender clearly fell in love with that accent because we sat right there drinking the Bourbon Counties all night long. And I was like, this is epic. Like I've never had anything like this. And from there, it just sort of, moved forward. But one of the reasons why I'm so into Bourbon County is because that was sort of like my gateway into the whole beer community. Like, I never thought of beer as being something that was worthy of, tasting and discussion and, comparison until I had gone to a couple of those tastings. And when you see the complexity of it, and I mean, quite honestly, like I am such a neophyte compared to like where you are.
I'm not even like that. I really don't consider myself like that much of an expert. Like,
You have a book on it. I I
yeah.
I, I give you a lot of credit on that one. All right.
Well,
And
I
yeah.
I, I only co-wrote this because it has Josh Christie's name on there
Hmm.
too.
Like I said, you've co-authored a book on it. You clearly have a more developed, understanding of it. But I also thought, like, I saw, and I have to give Kyle from No Hype a lot of credit. I saw him doing it, and one day he mentioned he was a teacher, and I was like, oh, I guess it is okay for us to do those reviews.
Mhm.
And I waited a whole year after coming to that conclusion, because I was going to do this as a duo thing where I always had a buddy with me. But you know how scheduling is. You can't always
Yeah,
get everybody together. And then
yeah.
one day I was like, screw it, let me just try. And I threw the camera up on the bar, and we had moved recently, and the bar was a new thing because we didn't have it in our old house. And I was like, I have a perfect set. I have all of this gear because I'm a gear junkie and I use a lot of this for other stuff also. And I was like, why not? And I ran through, and now it's become, like I feel almost like I mean, I'm sure you have this as well. It's like a compulsion, like I have to do my 2 videos a week. I don't know how some of you guys do your production schedules,
Mhm.
because 2 videos a week for me, that's where it is. If I do a short every once in a while, it's because I'm at a place and I remember to do it. But I mean, really, it was that first Bourbon County coffee, and then the realization, like, this is a serious genre of consumable. Like, this is something that's really worthy of not just drinking, but talking about and share. Like, I have to tell you, 2 times a year, I have people over, and the bar behind me, we have a massive tasting. So I'll lay out the beers that we're gonna do, and it is one of my favorite days of the year because we talk about beer, we jump into the bottles. about what it is. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a story about the time they had this beer or that beer. So I think I like the storytelling that goes with it too when you get into those conversations.
Yeah.
You know, for me, it just feels it's fun to have that interaction. Even fun, like, okay, like you'll pop up the other day, you put up a picture of your beer fridge, and I saw you had, yeah, you had a bottle of the Perfect Pour by, I can't remember the name of the brewery.
Boulevard.
Yeah, from Boulevard. And I remember I was so excited because I was like, I reviewed that. And exactly,
Yeah.
it's
This
one of
was
the,
my #1 beer of 2023.
that was a great beer. Although
Actually, I think this beer is better than this beer.
you know, I think it's arguable that it could be, considering, again, I think the 2019 is weak. But I mean, like, I saw that, and that I find it really exciting. Again, I hate to go back and keep, you know, saying this, but like, at No Hype Beer Review, he did a review of Fiden's I Assure You We Do Stouts. And I was like, I've had that. And I was so pleased because you had that conversation. It's one of the reasons why I love Bourbon County that time of year, because everybody has commonality that we can all talk about. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, we're limited by our geography. You know, like, you can get stuff that I can't get. I can get stuff that, you know, you can't get. I mean, especially since I'm really,
here.
well, I'm very seriously into a lot of the beers that come out of New Jersey. And Jersey for me is an hour ride away. And we have friends who live in Jersey. So when I visit, I can go and pick stuff up, but they can't ship. Like, it is illegal for Jersey to ship.
Yeah, they have a lot of archaic laws there too.
Oh,
Like,
you
you
know,
can't even pump your own gas in New Jersey.
that's actually changed. They now have it where they only have to have one attendant on. So you can actually pump your own if you want
Oh,
to.
really? Wow.
And they've changed a lot of laws now with the breweries also. Like, the breweries can now, they can have, they're no longer limited on how many nights they can have, let's say, trivia or a food truck come. Because, like, two of my favorite breweries are down the Jersey Shore. And, you know, like, they have also changed my opinion on a lot of stuff. You know, like, I do not like IPAs, but there's one brewery in New Jersey, Gusto Brewing, that I love. And the guy there was like, no, no, try this. And he was right. And like, it opened that door. So I mean, there's just so much about it. The community, the tasting, the discussion, I get a big kick out of.
Yeah.
And I mean, have you had any of Equilibrium's pastry stouts?
No, I've had a few of their IPAs and pale ales. We can actually get some of their stuff here in Florida. And there's
They,
this burrito chain called Bubba I don't know if you've heard of it or they have it up there. I mean, it's basically the same as Chipotle or Tijuana Flats, one of those places. And they actually have Equilibrium beers like right there. And
so
like,
that's
actually, I've gone to this burrito place and bought cans to go. Like, I mean, I love a good burrito as much as the next person.
But yeah, but a good burrito with
I'm
good
there
beer.
like just to get the beer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Equilibrium ships. I don't know if they ship to Florida. I just don't remember. But I'll tell you, if you get a chance to get their pastry stouts, this is going to sound absolutely nuts. Get yourself a pint of vanilla Haagen-Dazs and take a little of the beer and pour it over the ice cream. It changes everything. We did that I did it at a tasting here, and people went absolutely crazy for it. And you're talking an 11% stout that was, you know, in a little tiny 2-ounce glass, poured over a little bit of really good quality vanilla ice cream, and it was epic. And that's funny is what's funny is a guy from a distributor told me to try that. Years ago, he's like, you got to try Linderman's Framboise poured over vanilla ice cream. I think he might have had a little bit of a problem when it came to the beer because he was pouring the beer over everything. But, you know,
And you don't even have to like pour it over. You can just have it like next to it. Like, have you ever been to like a beer dinner where you have like 3 or 4 or 5 courses and like it's like a
yes.
food paired with beer? And it's just like when you go from the one to the other. Speaking of which, I wanted to show you this. I wanted to show you what I had for dinner because I really could have used this Bourbon County. So I had this awesome steak that I got from. This is actually from Aldi, and so I was drinking cream soda with it. I like to do contrasting pairing. So you do like savory, spicy steaks. I can put the Montreal seasoning and like a Tabasco A1 on there. And I have the sweet cream soda to like, you know, do a 180 like after. I mean, not every bite, but every once in a while. And here's a picture of my cat. I was cutting when I was cutting the steak. He kept like putting his claw on my hand, and I would actually feel his claws come out because he wanted to smell and like lick the knife.
I had a cat, but I haven't had a cat in a long time. But I had a cat. I remember that they're very forward about everything when it comes to that. So,
what I was going to say about 10 minutes ago is I don't know if you saw my podcast with Darwin. We're going to reshoot it. But like Darwin had a very similar story to you because he's also from Long Island, and he just basically went straight to the ropes course, which sounds like what you did. Like you just went because actually I don't know actual percentage of us, but I would say like most craft beer enthusiasts. I'm not talking about BeerTubers. I'm talking about people who actually like craft beer. You start out with like you're drinking Bud Miller Coors in college or high school or whatever because you're just trying to get drunk. Like you're not drinking it for the flavor, and then maybe it's like an IPA or maybe it's even just like Yingling, and like you drink something that's like, oh, I can get a buzz off this, and it's also something that actually tastes good. Like when I was in college in the 90s, like so many girls, they're like, oh, I can drink Bud Light if I'm chewing mint gum or something. And for me it was, I mean, like I never really liked fizzy yellow beer. And then I was just like something that was like a little bit different. You remember like George Killian's Irish Red?
Fondly, I remember it.
That was original, like real Irish beer, and then Coors bought the IP, and then they did their own version. So like I only know the Coors version, which is really ironic because I don't think they even make it anymore. I haven't seen it in years.
I haven't had one in years. Come to think of it, it's not even one I until you brought the name up. I was sort of like, oh my god.
When I was in my late teens, early 20s, and we are going to bars, just trying to like scope out girls and stuff. Like all my friends are just sucking down Bud Light, and I'm like, all right, well, give me something that I can actually taste. So I would get like George Killian's or like Sam Adams Boston Lager, and like even like Guinness at one point. I'm like, oh, at least Guinness like is something totally different, And actually, if you're drinking Guinness in a bar, well, you get like a little bit. Well, it depends on who the person is, but some people like instantly respect you because like you have this big, this black beer, and everybody else has fizzy yellow beer, or they have like a cocktail of some sort.
Isn't it funny though with Guinness that I remember this in college where people were like, "Oh, he's a serious beer drinker." It's 4.2% ABV.
I know it's the same as Bud Light.
It's water. I mean, you can drink it. Even I mean, I don't know. Have you tried the Guinness 00, the non-alcoholic?
I haven't tried that one yet.
It's not bad. It's a little thin. It's not bad. It tastes like Guinness. See, this is where I have to admit I was spoiled. I went to college on Long Island, and there was a place that we would all go to called Croxley's, and this was in 1992, 92, and they had 63 beers on tap in 92.
Wow.
And I was not a beer guy. I was a cider guy. And then I tried the cider mixed, like a snake bite, a cider mixed with a Guinness. But Croxley is now like five places on Long Island, I think. And we would go there and we would get, it was 10-cent wings. So it was, 50 wings a person. And then we would try the different beers, and the beers were cheap. So like if you wanted to get, something different, you weren't spending like $6 for a beer. It could be $4. Or if you went with something crazy, crazy exotic, which was like something from Vermont, you would wind up spending like $6 or $8. But that place, that changed the beer drinking calibration of most of the people that I dealt with, where it went from being like Budweiser, Bud Light, I remember Amstel Light was very popular when I was in college, where people were like, oh, wait, no, have you tried Smutty Nose? And it's like, oh, no, I haven't, but let me try that. Or have you tried? I will never forget when I ordered a Linderman's Framboise in this place, and they came in a little tiny, like 6-ounce glass. And I was like, "Ooh, I have hit the pinnacle of craft beer with this." So,
Yeah, I remember eating
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mahar's in Albany. They one of the bartenders there, he like because I would bring dates there. It was this, it's this pub in downtown Albany or Midtown, really, and they actually had cask beer there. They had 6 cask beers, and usually they were from Middle Ages, but every once in a while they'd get something from overseas. Um, so you would actually get like London, like Fuller's London Porter or Old Speckled Hen, like on
Yeah.
tap, and if I took a date there who wasn't a beer drinker, the bartender would be like, "I got you." He would do a blend of Lindeman's Framboise and like Young's chocolate stout, and it's like that raspberry and chocolate, and it's just like, it's so good. Like, how can you, unless you? I never had anybody that didn't like that combination, or even like like you were saying, like Guinness and cider, which is a really underappreciated drink. I really love a good, what they call it, a spider bite or snake bite.
I can't, it's funny. I was down in Maryland and somebody made it for me, and I was like, I can do that. So I came home and I did one, and I bent the spoon and did everything you were supposed to do to pour it the right way. But I have to tell you, like, I have really started to appreciate Guinness more as sort of a go-to beer when I want a beer, but I don't want, like I have to admit, like, well, it's not even hammered. Like, I have to admit, like, this is a lot for me for a school night. But like, most of the beers I drink, like, I like a higher ABV beer. So, like, even upstairs right now, I have a triple IPA that I have that's 10%, and like, I tend to find that the higher ABV for some reason satisfies me more. Now, do I drink more than one of those? No. But I just tend to like a little bit more alcohol content in my beers. Although I have to be honest, my all-time favorite beer is 5.6. Like, my go-to drinker is Cape May Brewing Company. They have this beer called it's a honey porter, and they use like Jersey honey in it, and it's awesome. But it's 5.6. And I have to admit, like, I go down to Cape May for the summertime. So everything that's associated with that beer is wonderful. So,
that's in New Jersey, right?
What was that?
New Jersey?
Yeah. It's actually, if you go to Jersey and you go all the way down
the Delaware border.
Yeah, it's right there. It's literally it's right across the bay from like Lewes, Delaware. There's a ferry, but they actually have, like, they have my 2 favorite breweries. Period. Like, and upstate New York is the third. So.
Kind of like what you were saying. That's I did a poll about this a long time ago. Because I try to post something on my community post like every day, but I don't always get around to it. Like, I do a poll or a quiz or just like something in the news or something like that. But a while ago, it was probably like a year ago, maybe more, I said, like, what is like one of your favorite surprises when it comes to the beer, like just being a beer enthusiast or whatever? And I forget what the choices were, but like my answer is when a low ABV beer has as much flavor as a high ABV beer. Like those session beers or those dark mild, like especially a lot of the English beers or like the German lagers. But you have to get them like super fresh though. It's like getting like a mild. I mean, literally the name of the style is in the, like, it's mild. It is a mild beer, but it's like, it's mild, but yet still very flavorful and tasty and satisfying. It's not like mild doesn't mean like plain or bland. It's just, it's just not like flavor explosion like Bourbon County 13.7. Like, we can just get rid of the one there, or you know, like actually right here I got one. I'll show you. I don't know if you've had this one. Have you ever had this? This is from Jester King Le Petit Prince. It's
I have
a
not.
it's a sour. It's only 2.9% ABV.
It's funny. In my fridge right now is a 4-pack of an English mild by this tiny little brewery down in Cape May, New Jersey, and they've actually paired with what I think is the best coffee shop I've ever been to, also in Cape May, and they came up with an English mild that's like, I want to say it's 3.4%. I have had people come to my house who, you know, like they've just gotten off the plane from England, and, you know, they've been like, this is a proper mild. And, you know, like you drink it and the flavor is there. The coffee is there. Everything is exactly where you want it to be. But at the same time, you can drink it and not have to worry about the ABV. You know, I mean, like a Bourbon
Yeah,
County, as much as I love this, this is a guarantee that when this bottle opens, my car keys are nowhere near me for the
yeah,
rest
yeah,
of the
yeah,
evening.
yeah.
Just the way that it is. And if you're having a tasting with people over and you have a bunch of these, even if you're splitting it amongst 4 or 5 guys, nobody is driving because the ABV is just so high. Have you had Tweak? I can't remember who. I think it's like Avery Brewing or something like that. I did a review a long time ago. It was like 17% and
Wow.
easily the most dangerous beer I've ever come across because you could not taste the alcohol.
Wow.
It's almost like Dragon's Milk's triple mash. Again, 17% ABV. You cannot taste the alcohol in it. And I
I
made the
haven't,
mistake. Oh, go
I
ahead.
haven't
I'm
seen
sorry.
I haven't seen an Avery beer since I moved to Florida, and even when I lived in Albany, we could only get like their big deal releases, like Maharaja. So yeah, I don't
I
really have a lot of experience with that brewery.
Yeah, I've only had the Tweak, and the only reason I had it is somebody brought it over, and they were like, "We didn't get to drink it that night." They were like, "Hey, man, you're gonna love this. Put this in your fridge, and when you get a chance, do a review." And I was shocked that it was 17%. But I mean,
Yeah,
Dragon's Milk, you get that down by you, right? The Dragon's Milk
yeah,
stuff.
and you can get it at the supermarket.
If you take a look, they put out. It was called Triple Mash, also 17%. And again, so smooth, you would never know that it was over 5.
It's called Dragon's Milk.
Yeah,
Triple Mash?
it's Dragon's Milk Triple Mash. Hold on one second. I'll get a bottle. I'll show you what it looks like. Come on. There we go. So this is what it looks like.
Mhm. Yeah, get the
Yeah,
website
that's
up.
it. Yeah, I think this is one of the best beers you can pick up.
18.7. Wow.
Well,
The
that's
beer
actually
says.
higher than what I have here. If I'm not mistaken, this bottle, yeah, this bottle is coming in at it says 17%. So they've upped the
Can't get it
ABV.
around here.
But I have to tell you, that beer, it came into a local distributor. I bought it on a whim. I had one bottle of it, and I went back and I bought the other 2 4-packs
How much was it?
because it wasn't expensive. I think for a 4-pack, it was about $22. So, which I mean, for
Pretty.
that ABV, that's sort of a surprisingly low price. You know, like normally you expect that to be much more expensive, but I mean, unfortunately, at this point, yeah. So this is the 2023 Bourbon Barrel Aged Stout, 17% ABV. But you know, anybody who's watching this, if you have access to this, I would purchase it outright.
What did
Um,
they use like honey or molasses or
Let me say, forgive me, I
probably
do
use
not.
something to get the ABV way up there.
I have to actually throw a little more light on this. Dragon's Milk Triple Mash is the ultimate indulgence, the result of years of honing techniques and pushing the limits of what a stout can be. Aged for 1 year in hand-selected bourbon barrels, the flavor notes of dragon milk, chocolate, roasted malt, vanilla, and oak are all amplified in a way that allows for balance, refinement to shine through. And like I said, this is the 2023. Do they give you anything else on this? 17% ABV. Put it in the Bourbon County glass. That's actually about all that's on here. That's the other thing, and I hate to admit it. Like sometimes I looked at Dragon's Milk. I like their base beer, and so when I saw like a special release, I was like, all right, let me give it a try. So, and well, it was the same thing with Boulevard. They had that Magic Drip barrel aged one a couple years ago, and I tried it on a whim because I liked their churro stout, and I was like, oh my god, they hit with the barrel aged also.
Have you
So
noticed that New Holland is trying to like capitalize on bourbon barrel success? Now they're doing like a whole line of Dragon's
yeah,
Milk. And it's
well,
funny
it
because you can
seemed
actually get the Dragon's Milk at the supermarket here in Florida, and like the Solera, which I really didn't like, and they have like a some blonde or something. I sent you a picture of it.
yeah, it's I've seen that one. It's the white label, I think, or like the
Yeah, it's
white
like
and
white
gold
and
label. Yeah,
gold or whatever.
I haven't tried that one yet. I like I said, I like the regular. Like if I need a go-to beer to take to an event where I know people are going to be drinking, I like the base Dragon's Milk. It's a good solid beer, good ABV. You have one, you feel good. If the company's not great, you have two. But it's a solid beer. And then if you get into a conversation with somebody, you can sort of dive into that. But they've really gone over the top with a lot of the barrel age stuff by me. The
Yeah,
last time I was in the distributor, I saw at least 4 or 5 variants sitting there.
yeah.
So,
It's like even local, small, like tiny little, nano breweries. Everybody's doing a barrel aged version of something. Like it might be tap only, but
mhm.
they will get a used whiskey barrel from somebody somewhere. And
Well,
even my homebrew club, when I lived in Albany, I was in a homebrew club called Albany Brew Crafters, and we did this. You ever had Allagash Curio or
yeah.
Curio? Okay, so like that's Allagash's triple. And it's aged in Jim Beam bourbon barrels,
Mhm,
and somehow we were able to get one of those barrels. So what we as a homebrew club, we did this thing. We went to a local nano brewery. I think it's like a 5 barrel system. It's for a brewery, it's very small, but like it's gigantic compared to a home brewery.
mhm,
So like we went there like on a Saturday, we brewed an English barley wine. And then but like they let us use their equipment to brew it, but they wouldn't let us use their equipment to ferment. So we all just brought our own 5 gallon buckets. And we just split it up between everybody's different buckets, and then we fermented it. And then we put it into the barrel to age it. It's the same barrel they used to make Curio, and it was definitely infected. So like it was supposed to be English barley wine with like bourbon barrel notes, but it turned out to be very cidery.
mhm.
It was definitely infected. Most people hated it. I thought it was actually pretty good. Um, I entered it in a couple of competitions, but it scored very low, like probably like low 30s, low to mid 30s for
Do you
BQC.
brew a lot?
I don't brew anymore. I used to brew a ton when I lived in Albany, and then when I moved to Florida, I still brewed, but I kept getting my batches kept getting infected
Mhm,
because I think it's like the humidity in the air here. It's just like the wild yeast and the bacteria tend to just float in the air more.
mhm.
I don't get it.
No,
And like,
I
'cause I was doing the same sanitation techniques that I did in New York, where I made award-winning home brews, and also at least like I had like a cellar up there. Like literally the apartment I had was like it was a house that was turned into apartments. It had a basement, like with those metal doors. I forget what they're called. You know what I'm talking
oh,
about? Like
Bilko doors.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Um, so I could put my beer down there to cellar, or depending on the type of the beer. But like when you live in Florida, pretty much all you can do is saison because saison yeast likes warm air.
Mhm.
So like it's when I moved here, that's all I started doing was saison and like Hefeweizen. And actually, it's funny. I have the medal right here. So
That's cool.
a local. I don't know if you can see this, but I came in second for. I don't know. I was third. I thought I was second. It's called. Sorry, this isn't picking up on camera, but it says.
Yeah, it's just a little bit too much light on it.
Yeah, it says sorta spicy saison.
Mm. I have tried brewing. I've brewed 3 batches of beer, and I cheated. I used the Pico brew system, where you basically drop the cartridge in, and I had just gotten it when the company went out of business, so I was able to, like I don't know. Did you ever encounter the Pico brew? It was
No, no.
okay. So it basically you put in this large cartridge of this type of beer that somebody else has put together. So the hops, the yeast, everything's in it. The machine cooks it the way it's supposed to cook. It comes out into the barrel. You add the yeast into it after you've disinfected everything, and then it ages. And there's actually like a thing that goes on top of it that tells you when it hits peak ABV and all this kind of stuff. And it was really cool. And there was no way this company had a marketable, product. It just, although I mean, it's funny because people now have made it so they use those machines separately, and they're still brewing with them, even though they went out of business during the pandemic. But people are still brewing with them. But it's like, people are trying to get a part here, a part there. And that's when I realized that, when I get to the push button system, and the push button system is too much of a pain in the neck, that, home brewing is really, I need to retire before I try that again. Like I need time.
I will say, like, home brewing in New York is way better than in Florida, especially
Mhm.
just off the tap water alone, because the tap water here is like so chlorinated. Like
Mm,
nobody drinks beer straight off the tap or beer. Sorry, nobody drinks water. Like even like when you're brushing, like when I brush my teeth, I don't actually swallow the water. I just swish it around. Um,
mhm.
and I have like 2 or 3 Brita filters, like pitchers in the fridge. I just keep those on constant rotation, filtering out the tap water because it's so highly chlorinated. Like tap water in Florida tastes like when you go swimming in a pool.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I give New York credit. The water here is pretty solid.
Yeah.
It is.
I was
And I
home,
mean,
I was home in Schenectady at my parents' house in August last year, and because my girlfriend, she's from here, she's from Florida. She had never been to upstate New York before, and I said, one of the small pleasures you're gonna get when we go to New York is you're gonna be able to drink water right out of the faucet, and it actually tastes good. And
mhm.
sure enough, go to, like, my parents' house, I'm like, "Here, just fill up a
Hmm.
glass off the sink in the kitchen. I'm like, taste this." She's like, "Oh, wow, this actually tastes pretty good. It's just sink water?"
Yeah. Now it's funny because California was like that. Like everything. It sounds silly, but a shower is not as like cleansing in New Jersey as it is in New York, because
Right, right.
it's because of the water. There's a hardness to it. When I've been down in Florida, I have family who live in Cooper City, so more by Lauderdale and stuff like that. And
No.
the water there is not something that I would fill a water bottle up without filtering it
Yeah.
first. So I mean, but it's funny because I was talking to a brewer from New Jersey, and he was talking about the level of sulfur they have in their water and the crazy amount of filtration they have to do before they actually brew, which I never gave a second thought to, but it really does become an issue. So I think in about 4.5, 5 years, I might try home brewing again.
Cool.
So
You know how, like, in Hollywood, how they have, like, the slate where they go the slap thing?
yeah,
The reason why they do that is, like, it makes, like, a really loud sound so that when they're editing it, they see that huge sound thing on the track, and that's when they know when to come back.
it's
But
funny. I do that with my beer videos when I edit. I don't do the clap, but I do, and it's been pointed out that I've missed it in the edits. I do the 3, 2, 1 because it's a very set wave on the sound when I go in to do my edits.
Turn that off.
Because I do all my editing. I don't know what you use. I use Final Cut Pro for most of my stuff. But it's you
must be
need
a
it.
Mac person.
What was that?
You must be a Mac person.
You know, it's funny. I am actually like an Apple Distinguished Educator, which is a thing, and so I've been dealing with Mac stuff since I think like 2012. I was a diehard PC guy, and one weekend my two IBM laptops both died, and I was like, you know, screw this, and I went out and I bought a Mac, and I learned how to use the Mac, and yeah, honestly, it works so nicely with all of the cameras that I use that it's simpler to do edits on the lowest level iMac than it was to do it on the high end PCs. So,
Yeah,
you know, I mean,
that's
it
funny.
might have changed now with the PCs, but you know, the Mac still to me is just so easy to navigate and deal with. So,
Yeah. All right, I'll come back here. I'll cut all that out.
yep.
All right, we are back. And got some LaCroix. Man, like we were drinking that Bourbon County 2019 for almost 2 hours, about an hour
Yeah.
and a half. And yeah, I'm like really feeling it now.
Hmm.
And yeah, as it warmed up to room temperature, it was getting like super cloying. So like I had to just keep sucking down the water.
Yeah, I'm on Poland Spring at this point. So,
Yeah, I'm on LaCroix
yeah.
grapefruit.
You know, I have to say with the Bourbon County is my favorite thing about them is that you share them. You know, you have a
Yeah.
group of people together, you sit down, you try them, you talk about them, you have the whole conversation. So, you know, that's the whole thing. Like sitting down for an evening and having a whole bottle is, it can be you know, it's work. You know, it really is. It's sort of work by the end of it.
Yeah. I only wrote down a few. Well, sorry, it's not really picking up on camera, but I wanted to ask you about your basement bar there. Like I
Sure.
can actually see the neon sign behind your head. It says Tony's.
It does.
Is
So
that like a reference to a movie or?
it's actually a reference. So, okay. I apologize. I know I talk a lot. So when we bought this house about 5 years ago, we walked through the house. Great house. My wife wanted to live in this neighborhood. My wife and I started dating when we were in high school, so we've been together ever since then. And she'd always wanted to live in this particular neighborhood. And a house came up, and it was the right time, and all that kind of stuff like that. And we do the walk through the house, and in the basement was this bar from like the 1960s. And my wife is like, "Oh, well, we'll knock that out." And I'm like, "No,
Hell no.
we will keep that. And that will be like the centerpiece for when we have people over. We'll start in the bar." And what's funny is when we initially bought it, it was a whole open basement platform, not platform, layout. But we had a flood and we redid the basement. And my wife was like, "Well, what? You love the bar. Why don't you make it into your office?" So the actual, and I'll move my iMac around a little bit, like the entirety of the bar is actually, you know, it's actually a pretty big space when
Oh, you
you
get a
go
Pac-Man machine. Sweet.
through the whole thing. Oh yeah, I have a payphone from the 80s in here.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't work. It's sort of like, you know, like it's a prop phone. To get a payphone nowadays, by the way, is ridiculously expensive if you want it to work, because they were analog and we're digital. But you know, when I moved into the house, I was like, "Oh my God, this guy who lived here had built this beautiful bar." And I mean, there's actually right here where that light is, there's a sink under there. There's a fridge back there. You know, you can put all your top shelf stuff there. It was waiting for, you know, like revitalization. So, you know, came in, did my Star Wars posters here, have my, you know, stuff. Now, Tony is, my father-in-law passed away. God, it's coming on 20 years ago. And we actually named the bar after him. because he was a big fan of like the whole basement bar thing. He had one in his house. So we named this Tony's after him. And there's actually a picture of him over there on the wall, sort of like, you know, memorializing him and everything like that. But most of what I've done with the bar was because I went to an English pub and it was incredible. I had never encountered a bar like that, and that's sort of what I wanted here. So, you know, like there's no TV behind the bar. There is a TV up here, but that's more for like when I do work and stuff. But I want it to be a place where you can have people come in, sit down, relax, have a drink, have a good conversation, play good music. And that's sort of what, you know, I've sort of laid this bar out. Now, the funny thing is the lady I bought the house for, you see the stools? She was like, "Oh, I'll throw them out for you." And I was like, "Don't touch the stools. They are perfect in color. They are perfect in texture. They are god-awful uncomfortable after 2 hours sitting on them. But from a perspective of like how they look, they're perfect for the bar." So, you know,
if that was my house, I'd have to like change my entire personality. I would have to like become like an extrovert to like make friends with people to bring them over. Like I'm like that like around like Christmas time because like
Mhm.
you know my house or my apartment is like pretty plain except for like this room. Um, so the only time I have like anything like that is like around Christmas when I hang up actual stuff and I have a Christmas tree and all that
Mhm.
stuff. And like when I was single, I would something I would always say is like because I would always like deep clean the apartment on Sundays. And there's like this tiny little part of me that would be like, man, I kind of wish like the Mormons or the Jehovah's Witnesses would come over so they could like, if somebody would come over to like appreciate like how clean this place is, you know,
Yep.
or you know, like at Christmas we had the decorations and stuff. It's like I'm putting these decorations up and like funny sign like in my bathroom, like on the door. There's a picture of please seat yourself, and like it has a picture of the toilet. Like inside the bathroom, it says like if you're running out of toilet paper, text me, and then like another one says, "Wash your hands, you filthy animal," you know. And it's kind of like I'm the only one who sees that. I'm like, man, I need to make more friends so they can come over to appreciate
Well,
that. So since you
it's
had that basement bar, have you like gone out and like made new
oh,
friends? And, like,
I have once I got the bar tweaked, I wound up having my first tasting over here. So I invited a bunch of the guys I work with over. And you know, like we've got 4 stools, we've got 2 chairs back here. One of my friends actually has claimed that one chair permanently. So every time he walks in the door, he just that's his chair.
yeah,
But yeah, I love like this is like when we have people over, we start in the bar. So like, you know, the appetizers are in the bar. And I have to tell you, like, you know, like that paneling is the same paneling that we all encountered when we were kids. And there's an overwhelming amount of nostalgia that's attached to it. So like you walk in here and it's, at least to me, it's I love my whole house, but to me, this is like the heart. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like this is where we start. Even on Thanksgiving, you know, it starts here. We'll have 20, 25 people over, and you know, like you'll have 10, 15 people in the bar talking and drinking, and then moving upstairs to the dinner and everything that goes along with it. So I mean, I love this. And I have to admit, like when we were doing you know, when we were on lockdown during COVID, it was refreshing to be doing your you know online teaching with the background blurred, and then turn around and know like there's a bar behind you. You know, like it's actually really cool to know that it's there. So I mean, the gentleman who built this, who owned the house before me, um, I don't know how he had passed away before we bought the house. I don't know how much money he spent on this, but this thing is built like a rock.
wow,
You know, like if I wanted to take this out, you're talking about 4 or 5 days worth of heavy duty labor. And then he's got the sink drilled into the ground and draining out. And he just clearly, like in the 70s and 80s, this was a place where people would come and entertain. And I know it sounds really cheesy, but I want to sort of keep that up. I sort of like
yeah,
the idea that this bar has been functioning since, you know, at least the 80s, if not, you know, like the 70s or the 60s. So
Is there a laundry room like around the corner?
the laundry room is actually like the basement's actually reasonably large. The laundry room is like way up and to the left, so it's a ways away. But like I've cut out. This used to all be a straight wall. We pushed that back so I could get the chairs in here. All of the piping is up here, so like there was actually a good amount of space to be reclaimed when we actually redid everything.
What's that thing behind the printer?
Say it again.
I saw you had a regular printer, and there's something behind that.
Yeah, so I do a lot of technology stuff in my classes. So that's a 3D printer. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say it looked like a 3D printer.
It's the lowest level 3D printer you can get, like the $300 3D printer. But if you're trying to show kids designs and stuff like that, it's really convenient to be able to come home and run it here. In fact, the last thing I was doing in my class, we were talking about the Pathfinder probe, and like it 3D printed a version of the Pathfinder probe, which like all the data to actually do this is online at a place called Thingiverse. And it's it actually works really well if you need quick plastic replacement parts for stuff, or you need a mount for an Apple TV, or you need this, 7-8 hours later, it does it. So
you can get a 3D printer for $300.
I think when I bought this, I got it below 300. And
wow,
if you're willing,
the cheapest was like at least 1,000 or so.
No. If you want to go really high end, or go with, let's say, what is it? MakerBot is the sort of like the name that everybody seems to know. If you go with a MakerBot printer, you're going to spend $1,000. If you go, this one is actually FlashForge, which it's not a MakerBot. It's got a little bit less of the bells and whistles. It takes a little bit more tweaking on your end to get it to work right. But if you're not afraid of doing that, it's a completely acceptable printer to actually go and get. And the plastic that they use for it is dirt cheap on Amazon. I think for like, figure average use for like 5 months of printing, you spend $20. So it's honestly, it's not the gear, it's learning how to use it that takes that frustrates people. And quite honestly, you want to buy one really cheap, go on eBay. Somebody got frustrated and sold their $1,000 3D printer for $500, and you'll get a better printer because of that frustration. Because they're a pain in the neck to use.
That 3D printer, all it would do is just like 3D print guns.
It's funny. For that type of stuff where you're looking to do something that's going to take a lot of stress, you need a higher level machine. Like that. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, those plastic guns, they usually fall apart after a few shots.
Well, I mean, in all honesty, like not even to jump into the whole gun thing, but like most of the stuff that they're talking about as far as 3D printing guns go, they're not talking about a receiver. They're not talking about a barrel. So like the real working parts of the firearm, you're not printing that at home. You're just not. It won't take the stress. And I know I've seen people on YouTube be like, I fired a 22 out of this once.
Yeah,
once.
And it fell apart.
And that's going to be it. So I mean, it's the same thing with do you remember over the summer when that submersible went down by the Titanic?
The submarine, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. And I mean, I'm talking from an educational standpoint, not an engineering standpoint. I don't know anybody who thought a 3D printed version of a submersible was a good idea. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, didn't they use like a PlayStation controller?
Yeah, they used a PlayStation controller, a carbon fiber, essentially like 3D printer to actually build the hull. I mean, even this Pathfinder thing that I have built in here, if I took my hand and crushed it, it would crush with no problem. This is not high tensile type of stuff when you start going through it. It's not going to take the stresses or the pressure of something that, requires, like let's say 1200 PSI. You're not getting that. especially not with a $300 machine. It's
Yeah.
just not going to happen that way. But you know, it is very convenient if you need to make a button or a clip or something like that. Or while we were going through the whole COVID thing, face masks. It was great for making the backings of face masks so you could hold them while you had to talk all day. The thing was awesome for that. And it's fun to design and print your own stuff. If you like Minecraft, you can print anything you build on Minecraft. So I know that has nothing to do with beer whatsoever, but again,
Yeah.
education jumping back in.
It's
But
kind
yeah,
of funny because like 90% of this podcast has been in like non-beer related, but
yeah, I
hopefully
apologize
people are
for that,
still.
man.
I think it's been a fun conversation. I should plug this at the beginning of the show is that if you're watching this on YouTube, this is also available as an audio podcast. So if you want to just listen while you're driving around or whatever, um, you can just download it and listen to it. Or if you are listening to it and you want to watch us and see what we actually look like,
Mm.
it's available on youtube.com/@ChanceBeerReviews.
Which is awesome.
Yeah,
I think that's cool because yeah, we have sort of meandered around.
yeah.
So
I wrote down a. I noticed that because I was watching, I was kind of like binge watching your channel to like get ready for the show. I
Mhm.
noticed like you almost always wear like a black sweater in your reviews. Is
I
that
do.
is that kind of like your
Um,
uniform for the show or?
in all honesty, years ago, I was told at a presentation I was doing, they're like, black is slimming. So, and listen, we're talking about beer. We're not talking about low calorie stuff. So for me, the black sweatshirt, one, it's really easy to make sure that if I have to do a color correction on the, on the editing, the black is easy to play off of. Two, I sort of dig the way the black sweatshirt looks. All of my other t-shirts have logos. They're distracting. And I really want to focus on the beer. So yeah, it's true. It's funny. I said that to somebody had me on their show the other day, and they were like, "I've noticed that after you read the bottle, you always take your glasses off. Is that so you can focus more on the flavor?" And I was like, "No, it's because they fog up." And like
Are
I take
you
them off because of that.
farsighted
So
or whatever it is? Like you
I
don't.
am very farsighted, and my far side, my distance vision's great. My up close vision is terrible, so I can see something cross a road a mile away. But if I had to take a splinter out of my hand, I'm blind as hell.
Yeah, these glasses I got a few months ago. They're progressive lenses, so like basically like trifocals,
Mhm.
which I should have got years ago because like I had this little notepad here, and like a few months ago I would have had to do this to read it, but
Yep.
like if I just look at like towards the bottom of the lens, I can read it no problem. So
Mhm.
if you can get bifocals or progressive lenses, I definitely
Yep.
recommend it.
Mine
Uh,
are by because I can tweak my distance a little bit, but yeah, up close I need the lenses.
yeah. So what is it about like stouts and porters and dark beer that you? I know it's like that's mostly what you review. Like like you said, you're not a big IPA guy. Like, what is it about the dark beer that attracts you?
I have to tell you the truth. I'm starting to dabble in the double and triple IPAs. We did a review the other day, my friend Kevin and I, of one of the IPAs, and there's just something off-putting about that taste. I hate. I'm not going to actually say what I said on my review, but I was like, this smells unpleasant. I don't like this. What I like about the stouts, I'm a big fan of the chewiness of it. Like I like that when you drink a stout, like it's like a meal. I
Mhm.
mean, like that Bourbon County you just drank was, like 860 calories. I like that there is a certain amount of, like body to that beer. I also like the fact that there's just so much variation in the flavors I get. I mean, like if I were to go to, let's say, a Cape May Brewing Company honey porter, I can taste that honey. It's like stepping back into summertime. If I jump into the Bourbon County cola variant, like I can taste Coca-Cola there without the, you know, almost the syrupiness of that. I don't know if you're probably not as old as I am, but they used to have Coke syrup that they would give you for like a sick stomach. And it was
Right.
literally a bottle of like Coca-Cola syrup, and they would give it to you at that. And like, there's a certain nostalgia to it. So for me, the stouts are just so able to be so many things. Like I can have a dessert, I can have something I can drink with my dinner. The porters, it's the same thing, and they always surprise me with the IPAs. To me, especially just the straight IPA, it's always the same citrus and grapefruit and bitterness and quite frankly dissatisfaction on my part when I drink it. I just and I've had some IPAs that people have told me are outstanding, like they're like epic, and I actually tell them, I'm like, listen, pour me a very small glass because I want to taste it, but I know I'm not going to appreciate it, and it is not worth wasting it on me.
I'm
um
wondering if you might have like you might be like a super taster or have like a sensitivity to bitterness because there's these. I wanted to show you this real quick. Um, there's these test strips you can get. They're just like little like pieces of paper,
mhm,
and like my homebrew club had this. Like you can get a tube of these for less than $6, and it's just a little piece of paper you put on your tongue, and like you wouldn't think like paper would be bitter, but if this paper is super bitter to you, then you
mhm,
know you have like a sensitivity to alpha acids or bitterness or something. It's funny because like I've heard like a lot of podcasts like with chefs and evolutionary biologists and stuff like that, and they say like bitterness is like basically like nature's way of telling you like something that you're eating is like not meant for you because like
mhm,
things like pine needles, like things that are bitter are not usually healthy or delectable. So like IPAs like are actually like counterproductive to evolution in nature because like
mhm,
there's really no reason that we should like something that is like super bitter. Although I will say, like, in the case of IPAs, you're also like tasting like the citrus and the
mhm.
pine kind of flavor and dank or weedy kind of flavors. Um, so it's just kind of an evolutionary thing. You can get those test strips on Amazon for like six
I
bucks.
might
And
actually check that out because, you
yeah,
know, I
I
know
think
my
I think I think Darwin is a super taster.
I know my palate is super sensitive, for one reason. Years ago, we went to Hershey Park, and we were doing a chocolate tasting, and they said 1 in 1,000 people will taste this. Does anybody want to, guess what it is? And I whispered to my wife, I'm like, If you eat enough Hershey's chocolate, you taste cheese." And she's like, "That's ridiculous. No, no, that's not it." And like 2 seconds later, the guy was like, "Cheese. If you eat enough Hershey's chocolate, you will taste the cheese that comes along with the milk and all this kind of stuff." So that's when I sort of got an idea like, okay, maybe I'm tasting more than a lot of people are tasting. But there's something about the IPAs which, um, there's something with that grapefruit flavor, and I like grapefruit. This is the thing that I don't understand. If you give me a grapefruit, I can eat it. It's enjoyable. But there's something about that grapefruit citrus that I see in a lot of the IPAs, not the triples, not the doubles, but the straight IPAs that I just do not like. It turns me off immediately. In fact, like I said the other day, I was like, "Oh my god, this smells like cat urine." Like I'm really not into
Oh
this.
yeah, that's
And it was an IPA that somebody, like my friend Kevin, he was like, "This is considered like the holy grail of IPAs." And I was like, "Take it back, dump it in your glass, finish it," because I
was it
couldn't do it.
was it Pliny
I can't remember, but I can tell you
or Heady
because
Topper?
yeah, that was it. It was the Heady Topper, where
Yeah.
I was like, in fact, I think on the review, and I normally try not to be this crass. I was like, this case tastes like cat piss. Like I can't drink this. Take this, and he did, and he loved it, and he's an IPA guy, and I just can't do it. With the triples, I feel like they've dialed down that bitterness. They've increased the ABV. I'm very interested right now in milkshake IPAs because I've never tried one that I know of. And somebody described one the other day, and I was like, that sounds really palatable. maybe it's something that's worth trying.
It's funny.
So
There's actually a lot of IPAs that called cat piss. The cat ate my
you almost,
stash.
I have to
I,
tell you, you almost got a spit take on that one. I
yeah.
literally almost spit my water on the screen. I had no idea.
Look how
But yeah,
many. Wow.
that's
Can you
what
love
I
that, by the way?
that's what I get. I am not a big fan of the IPA because of that particular flavor. Um, but the other thing is this, and I want to, like I'm trying. I take the channel. I mean, I have under 200 followers. So, but the followers who are there comment a lot, and I take it seriously that I should try different stuff. Like listen, I could drink Bourbon County all day. If they could make it more cost effective, I could sit down and have that every single night. Equilibrium's pastry stouts, could have it every single day, could share it with people. Dragon's Milk, all of that high ABV dark beer, I could drink without a second thought. But I feel like if I'm going to put an opinion out there, if I'm going to talk about this stuff, I should talk about as much variation in the beer genre as I possibly can. And listen, sometimes I hit I can't finish it. I mean, I have to tell you, and my friends find me offensive with this, where I'll be like, yeah, this is a dumper. Like I'm dumping this down the sink. I am not drinking this. And I, where I found it the worst, the seltzers. I've done like 3 seltzer reviews. Every single one of them has been bad.
Seltzers aren't really bitter, though.
It's not about the bitterness. It's the flavor. Like at this point, I realize I'm drinking for flavor more than anything. So like, like the Truly seltzers, I can't stomach them. It's just such a fake flavor. I had some, I have yet to have a White Claw, but I've heard they're even worse than the Trulies. So, I mean, I think the bitterness is one part, and I like beer that has a real flavor to it. Like I don't want to see like that somebody put vanilla extract in. I want to see vanilla bean. Like I don't want to see that, like I was really impressed going back to Bourbon County where they were like, we put like, 20,000 pounds of figs into this. I was like, all right, that's real stuff. Let's see how it came out. So like I'm really appreciative when it says on the bottle like vanilla bean, not vanilla flavor, or like
Right.
raspberries, not raspberry flavor.
Well,
So
you should homebrew, because then you can use that's because when you're using it like on a small scale, like 1 or 2 vanilla beans is good enough for like a 5-gallon batch. But like it's really hard to scale it up to commercial brewing. That's why they use extract. Or like if you go to a homebrew club meeting, you might be able to taste somebody's homebrew that use actual vanilla bean. Like one of my favorite homebrews that I made long time ago, Chad's chocolate cherry chili porter. It's I mean it is what it says. So it's like it's a porter base, like a robust porter. And then what I would do is I threw some cherry puree in there, and I sliced a couple vanilla beans, like actual vanilla beans, like you've seen them. They look like flattened worms,
yeah.
All you just take like a box cutter, you slice them open, and like, well, you sanitize them in like vodka for like a day or two. You just throw those in there, and then I used to grow super hot peppers. This is back when I lived in Albany, and I used to grow Trinidad Scorpion. I think they're like the hottest pepper. I think they've been replaced ever since then. But anyway, so just like one pepper, like the size of a walnut, like this big, you just take that up. You take that, slice that in half. You throw that in like a 5, 6, 7-gallon bucket for like 24 hours before you bottle it. And just like that one pepper, even though it's only the size of a walnut, has enough Scoville or enough capsaicin or whatever the spice molecule
Yeah.
is. It's enough for a 5, 6, 7-gallon bucket. So like you would get like like it's drinking like a porter, so you're getting like those dark kind of chocolate notes, a little bit of roastiness, you're getting like the sweetness from the vanilla bean, and then it finishes with a warmth. You don't
Mhm.
really taste pepper, but you get like this warming sensation. Um, although that's what a good pepper beer is. Although, kind of going back to what we were saying a long time ago, like one of my favorite things about beer is when flavors that you wouldn't think work together do. Like a long time ago, like you ever been to the Tap New York Beer Fest in Hunter's Mountain? It's
I don't
not
think
too
I
far.
have.
Like that's like the biggest beer fest in New York. Used to go every year. It's like a 2 or 3 day event. You have to get a hotel room and take a taxi to and from because you just feel like so hammered, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and I forget which brewery it was, but I remember it was one of the first years I was there. Some brewery had a raspberry jalapeno wit beer. I think it was. It was either a wit beer or a lager. And my friend handed it to me. He's like, "Oh, you gotta try this. It's raspberry jalapeno." I'm just like, "What? Raspberry and jalapeno doesn't sound like that would go at all." And I drank it. I'm like, wow, these flavors actually do go really well.
That's
You know?
always nice when you get that surprise. It really is.
Yeah.
And it is one of the things that I love about, when you get a beer that you expect not to work and it just hits on every aspect that they talk about. I
Mhm.
agree with you on that. So, but yeah, it's sort of it's funny. This has been a really meandering conversation.
Yeah.
But I
No,
have
it's
to
fun.
tell you, like it's been really enjoyable. Like I've
Mhm.
really gotten a kick out of but this is also part of that whole idea of what I like about the whole beer culture is that, like you'll come in with the commonality of beer, but there's so much more that everybody has to talk about, and there's so many more stories out there that
Yeah.
it's just so interesting when you start to talk to people. So, and I mean, that's sort of what I like about the whole thing, that you can
Yeah.
jump in and, like, yeah, we're talking about beer, but we're also talking about like, our music and, our life events and like when we did this or when we did that. I get
Yeah.
the biggest kick
Go
out
to
of
a
that.
homebrew club meeting. Is this how it is like every week? Or, well, I mean, am I only like a meeting like once a month or every 2 or 3 weeks? But this is basically how it is.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I really do. I think that's
Yeah.
awesome. So, but
Besides
yeah.
dark beer, like what other styles do you like? Do you like saison, sours,
Mm.
Belgians? Uh,
Um, I'm starting to really, really like, I'm gonna be a little specific on this. This year, for some reason, the Oktoberfest hit with me hard. I was really enjoying the Oktoberfest this year, which I mean,
by sorry to interrupt you. By
no, go ahead.
Oktoberfest, do you mean Marzen or do you mean
Yeah, yeah,
Fest?
Marzen. No, I mean the Marzens. So like I said, you're more proficient in this than I am. But yeah, so like the Marzen beers this year for me really, really hit. This has also been the first year that I've tried some sours, and I have been pleasantly surprised by them,
Mhm.
because I was always sort of like, "Oh, this is not going to be enjoyable." But I'm trying to think. I think I had something by Erie Brewing Company last week called Cherry Bomb, which was like a cherry sort of sour ale that was really good, really refreshing. So, I mean, I'm sort of this year at least. Not only am I looking for like these heavy sort of like bombs that we've been talking about tonight, but I sort of do really start to appreciate and enjoy those sort of like refreshing, forgive the phrase, but like crushable beers that are out there, like that you could
Yeah.
have a couple of them,
And
and enjoy them. So, that's sort of where I am right now. And I'm
when
trying
you
to
were
expand into IPAs. So I'm trying.
yeah, when you were talking about sours, were you talking about kettle sours? Like you ever had? Can you get Urban Artifact where you are?
I actually have seen their stuff. I have not had it, but it's on the shelf by me.
Yeah, this is a kettle sour, which is a lot different from like a Belgian lambic or goose or something like that. Like I'm sure you've seen the Lindemans uh, framboise and other variants, but
Mhm.
it's like is it different because like kettle sours is like so like you would make your mash and then you throw your bacteria in there and you let it sit for a couple days or a couple weeks or whatever it is, and then you would drain that and then you would boil it, so like you kill off all the bacteria. But you've already soured at that point.
Mhm.
But like that's the American kettle sour, and then the Belgian, like Petrus, Cantillon, the big name Belgian sour breweries. Anything that says Goose on it or Goose or whatever,
Mhm.
that's where they like would make a beer and they throw in those oak foeders. So like, because like most American or even just any modern brewery, they use stainless steel tanks, but the old Belgian breweries, and I think even like Pilsner or Kel, they use like these huge oak vats. They're called foeders, which is a funny
Mhm.
name. And it's just like in Belgium and in Germany and in Europe, they just have wild yeast and bacteria just floating around the air. And like they just age them in there for like literally years and years and years. They just get sour in the Brettanomyces, the wild yeast. Um, so like they really take their time making the sour beers in Belgium and the rest of Europe. But in America, we just figured out a way to just make it in a lab and like do a
Mhm.
quick turnaround time of like a month or two instead of years. So
But
yeah, it's kind of like when you say sours, it's kind of like, do you mean American, quick sours,
I
or do you mean the
I
Belgian?
didn't even realize that the Lindermans would be considered a sour. Um,
Well,
you
it's a fruit lambic. Yeah, I mean, it's not really. It's sour in that I mean, it's definitely got bacteria in it, but it's
Because
not like.
I've been drinking Linderman's Frambois and Linderman's Peach since about 1993
Mhm.
and have always loved those beers. So, I mean, I eventually, like, I'm going to Ireland in April, so I can't wait. Like, I have a whole rig set with me to go and do beer reviews in Ireland, which, I'm going to be so outclassed by the average person sitting in a pub. But, it'll be interesting to try. But I mean, I would love to be able to try like Linderman's there. Like, I'm looking forward to trying Guinness at the Guinness
Yeah,
factory because everybody tells me that Guinness in America is nothing like a Guinness
yeah,
in
I've
Ireland.
heard that too. I think it's just the freshness.
I can't wait to see, like even the other day I had a beer again what was it a British ale. I had the Old Peculiar
Oh,
and
yeah, I saw you reviewed that. Yeah, I
yeah,
haven't. We can't get that down here.
it was really good. And what's funny is like now I'm sort of hoping that I can find it somewhere on tap when in Ireland. Now the likelihood of that I don't know. But what I wanted to say is it's even funnier. Is the only reason I've tried the sours is because I did a beer trade with another YouTuber, and he sent me two
Beer
sours from Alabama. And he was like, "Hey, check these out." And they turned out to be really surprisingly good. So, I don't know if you've seen him, Grandpa's Grumpy Garage. He is not a beer reviewer. He does like all sorts of different stuff like that. And we did a trade. And I got stuff from Alabama. I sent him stuff from up here. And it was a really like mutually
Can you
positive
get
trade. What
Heady
was that?
Topper in stores where you are?
Yeah, yeah. Heady Topper is all over the shelves right now.
No,
So
that was always a chase beer, even when I lived in New York. You had to go to Vermont or something to get it, and
at this point, I have to say I live in an incredibly sweet spot and I don't know why. But there are two distributors literally within a 2 mile, travel from me. There's three within a 3 mile, and you can get anything you're looking for generally. So,
do you have
like, go ahead.
is one of those distributors Remarkable Liquids?
No, no, no. I mean, the biggest distributor we have is about 4 miles away. It's Total Wine. And quite honestly, New York Total Wine, with the exception of getting beers from New Jersey, New York Total Wine has almost everything you could possibly want. Jersey Total Wine has everything. Like you
Wow.
go in there and you can get whatever you're looking for. I did Firestone. Last week I did a Firestone 2023 release, and I was in Total Wine, and they had it, and not one, they had like a dozen, and it was like one of these hard to get. It was the release that tastes like a sidecar. I can't remember what it was called, but it was
For
awesome.
which
It was
beer?
very available. So,
Which beer are you talking about?
hold on, I can tell you in exactly 2 seconds because I did the review like literally last week, and I wasn't expecting it to be awesome. The beer that I was talking about, and of course I just clicked my phone off, was Gold River Blended Ale Vintage 1. And it was, I believe it was Firestone that actually did it, and it was supposed to taste like a sidecar, the drink, the sidecar. And I was not expecting much from it. I figured, there's so much of this on the shelf. And I took it home, and my regret is that I didn't buy another one because it was relatively cheap. I think it was like $10 a bottle. And I would really like to see how it ages. But it was really, really something else. So if you ever see that, definitely worth picking up. Definitely worth.
Yeah, we can't get Firestone Walker here, but sometimes I see some of their stuff on Tavor. It's funny because actually a lot of the beer that's in this fridge is I get a lot of my beer online. There's two apps that I use, Tavor and beerdrop.com.
Mhm.
And Tavor is great for getting this Tavor, by the way.
Yeah, I've used it.
They get a lot of exclusives. They get a lot of like real high end stuff like Anchorage Brewing, like barrel aged imperial stouts where they want like $90 for a 12-ounce bottle. Like I would never buy that, but it's pretty cool that it's available. A lot of triple IPAs and pastry stouts and barrel aged stouts and crazy sours and things like that. Half of them are just cool for the label art alone.
Yeah.
Actually, it's funny. The nice thing about cans now is because of the stickers, you can just peel the labels off. And I've been saving them. And I think what I'm going to do is like once I get enough of them, like this entire wall is just going to be all beer can labels.
See, that's really cool, though. I like that
This
type
one's
of
kind of cool.
decoration.
Yeah, like this is like a video game.
Mhm.
And
Honestly, my favorite can art was Fiden's I Assure You We Make Stouts. The play on the reference to the movie Clerks, I thought was
what is
so
this one?
awesome. Yeah, that's a good one.
Anything with a cat on it, I'm saving.
Yeah, I have found the can art has developed so far and above what it used to be that I mean I have to admit sometimes I'm drawn in, and that's why I buy the beer. So
Yeah, I think I don't have any evidence to back this up, but I think it is easier to sell a lame beer with an awesome label than it is to sell an awesome beer with a lame label.
yeah, and I don't think you're ever going to get any data to back that up
Yeah,
because who's going to admit to that? But I agree with you. I mean, I have bought some beers that have turned out to be terrible because the label looked really cool, and I was like, oh, I'll get
yeah,
a single that and just
yeah. I
see.
just want to save it.
Mhm. And
Or
that's I think it's like every other marketing, like how I mean it's like lining up on Black Friday for Bourbon County. Is the
yeah.
marketing effective? And if it is, people will bite.
The best labels are like ones that are like spoofs of like pop culture or
Mm.
something. Like a couple years ago, I had one from Listerman, I think it's called, and it was a spoof of Simpsons. Like how at the beginning of every Simpsons episode, it's Bart doing the "I will not," like he's
Mhm.
on the chalkboard.
Yeah, Blackboard stuff. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and like they made a Butterfingers beer, and it said I can put anything I want in
Mm.
beer. So obviously like a pastry stout, but I was like, I gotta get that beer just for the Simpsons reference. And it's funny, this is one I got this a couple of years ago. I don't know if you can see this. It says it's called Cocytus,
Yeah.
and it looks like a '80s metal
Mhm.
like Slayer album. And I bought this a few years ago, and they're just now reposting it, so I might buy this again. I remember the beer was actually pretty good. Let me see them. It's
It-
so it's $21, but you get two 12-ounce cans. That's not terrible
no.
considering. So that's like what, 10.50 a can?
Yeah, something like that. So which is
Yeah.
not terrible. I mean the price of beer has
It's 14% ABV too, yeah.
it's funny. There's a brewery up here called Nightmare Brewing that actually uses another brewing facility to actually make their beer. And
Oh,
they made something called Scapism a couple of years ago. It was a stout. It was 23% ABV, and you
wow.
could not taste the alcohol in it.
That brewery I
Um,
just showed you, they also made this one, uh, Martin House, I think they're called.
mhm.
And, like, I just bought it for the label. I mean, like, doesn't that look like a comic book?
It does. It actually looks like that iMachine, not iMachine.
Oh, yeah,
There's an, yeah,
not
it's something
I know
else.
what you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it reminds me of that movie poster.
This is
So
a 12.8, so it says, "Imperial Stout was brewed with sweet cherry puree and coconut,
flavors, yeah.
aged for a month in rum barrels."
Yeah, I have to tell you, like, as far as the barrel aging goes, I have not been impressed with what I've gotten out of rum barrels. And, it's going to sound sort of, weird here, but I've also, like, everything that I've had where it's aged less than a year, I'm not getting the flavor out of.
Yeah, I agree, it takes a long time.
It really does.
Remember
And,
there was
and this, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
there's a distillery that opened in Albany, I forget the name of them, and, it was a brand new distillery, and I think by law, the minimum that you can age something in bourbon barrels is, like, 30 minutes or something, and, otherwise it's moonshine, but, I mean, it basically was moonshine. I deleted the video lo I still have everything saved on my backup drive somewhere. Remember, it tasted like English. Like, you ever had, like, a Thomas English muffin, like,
Mhm.
untoasted? Like, the way that that ta like, that's
Yeah.
how it tasted. I was like, "Oh, this tastes okay," but I guess it's basically, like, legal moonshine.
Mm.
Are you a big whiskey guy?
I've gotten into the bourbons in the last year. So, like in the bar right now, there's and actually this my like of bourbon actually came from Bourbon County. So, the Old Forester, I got a bottle of the 1920, really like that. Um, I am a big fan though also of their, 90, what is it? 86 proof, which is really nice. So I like the Old Forester a lot. I like the Elijah Craig a lot.
Mm,
My cousin brought me up from Florida actually, because you can't get it up here, a bunch of Buffalo Trace that's been really nice. So like, do I like them? Yeah, I haven't gotten to the point. I really like bourbon in an old fashioned. Like that's my favorite.
yeah.
Bourbon straight is still a little heavy for me.
It
Like,
depends on which one, 'cause, if you can get Evan Williams, that one is, like, pure vanilla.
mhm.
And even, Jim Beam, very
But
vanilla, very sweet.
again,
Buffalo
once
Trace is, like, a little bit more spicy, a little bit more, like, rustic.
mhm.
It's also 90 proof, whereas, like, Jim Beam and Evan Williams are, I think, are 80 proof.
Yeah, the honestly, my favorite bourbon is the Old Forester's 1920, which is actually like 115 proof. But it's something that, it's like $60 a bottle.
Yeah,
It's top shelf stuff. Like I drink it on a special occasion, and hope that somebody gifts me a bottle. You know what I mean? Like
yeah. I wish
that's
if I could find it. So, like, about a month or 2 ago, um 'cause, like, what I don't know if you know, or well, I'll reiterate this for everybody who doesn't know. Like, I'm a gig worker, so I do
mhm.
Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats, Instacart, Amazon Flex, for a living. And, yeah, it was about a month or 2 ago, and somebody like, when you get, like, those like, as, like, crazy as craft beer nerds are about collecting stuff, is the whiskey, and especially bourbon nerds are, like, even you have to be, like, loaded 'cause
Yeah.
they will order 300-400 bottles of some booze, and, so this guy ordered not 1, but 2 bottles of, like, 300, so he wanted, like, 2 bottles of, like, whiskey or bourbon. It's like $600, and he tipped, like, 10%. I mean, it might have only been 5%, but it was also a really long trip, and it came in at, like, $100 for 2 items, and this is down in Orlando. and I took the ride. And it was just like this mom and pop liquor store, like in some ghetto strip mall plaza, like in a like somewhere you wouldn't really. And it was also night too, which had me terrified. So like in this bad part of town, this guy wants like this really high end booze, and I go in there, and like it's. I mean, you've heard the term top shelf liquor. Like this is like so top shelf. They actually get a ladder to climb up there. Like it's not like it's the top shelf here. It's like you
Yeah,
have
it's
to
way up.
climb a ladder to get up there. And the bottles that he wanted, they didn't have. So, but I showed him what they did have, and so he took like so instead of a $300 bottle, he wanted like two $100 bottles.
Mhm.
He's like, oh, okay, I guess I'll take that.
I
I
you
looked at a screenshot of it, but yeah, that was a very memorable delivery.
I haven't gone over the $60 a bottle. I've had tastings of some of the crazy expensive tequilas, the ones with the bell on the bottle, and
Mhm.
it's like $400 for this. And I've had friends who have had it, and they've been like, try it. And again, it's interesting. But like it's so cost prohibitive, when you start getting and whiskey, like beer is cost prohibitive
I don't know
enough.
how they justify those prices either.
And it's almost all secondary prices, like but
Mhm.
what's funny is like I'll go down to Cape May, which is like about 3 hours from here, and they'll have all of those top shelf bourbons. But like let's say you go for a bottle of like Blanton's, which is $60 MSRP, and they're selling it for $300 from with a straight face, $300 for that bottle of
Yeah.
of bourbon. Now, am I gonna go and spend $300 on that bottle? No. No, it's the
Yeah.
same thing. Like, have you seen the Sam Adams Euphoria? It's like
Oh, Utopia?
Utopia. I knew
Yeah.
I always get that word wrong. Utopia. Here you find it on the shelves sometimes for like $230 to $250 a bottle.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
super rare beer.
I have had the opportunity to buy it now 3 times, and that price tag is ridiculous. Actually,
If you
it's
go
funny. The
on,
first
if you go on eBay, you might be able to get a half empty bottle for like $50, which is what I did for my 1000th episode of this show
Mhm.
back in 2018. So, I
Yeah.
mean, which is really all you need because it's like 28% ABV, so it's
Mhm.
like drinking liquor. All you really need
But
is like a shot.
it's funny, the girl at the one distributor, and I go to this place all the time, she's like, "Oh, this is really expensive. I think it's like $80 a bottle." And she started to ring it up, and I had to actually tell her, I'm like, "You're gonna lose your job. Like, scan the bottle, please." And she's like, "Oh my God, it's $239." I was like, "That's what I thought it was. Put it back on the shelf. I'm not gonna take it." Because,
Yeah,
I mean, you can't take advantage of somebody who's trying to work, who just doesn't know
yeah, unless
exactly
you're
what
like
everything.
super
So,
rich, or money
yeah,
makes no object.
listen, I would
Like,
love to
that's like
taste it.
you buy the Bourbon County variants, like because they kind of come in like two variants, kind of like because you have like the regular, um, like these are like 12, 13, maybe $14 a bottle, which
Yeah, about
that's a
13 to
really good
50.
deal
Yeah.
considering.
Mhm.
And you have like the standard variants, like the Backyard Stout or the Bananas Foster. Those are usually like about $25 a bottle. Then
Yep,
they have like the, Angel's Envy or whatever, like the super, like I know they did a Pappy Van Winkle version once. And
I
those are
have
like
that.
40 or $50 a
Yeah.
bottle.
Mhm.
That's like nothing compared to like high end bourbon and
Yeah,
tequila. And
which is how I justify purchasing these beers. Like I always say, well, I could be into something much more expensive. I could be into whiskey or I could be into golf, and I'm into none of
yeah,
those. And so, but even so, like, the variants, I hunt for the lower prices. And the best time to find it is like 6, 7 months after, at least by me, 6, 7 months after July, August, around here, people are trying to clear out their shelves, and
yeah.
they'll knock the price down 10
It's
bucks.
funny, yeah. Like, I don't know. Obviously, you don't have Publix up in New York, but Publix
No.
is like the big supermarket chain in the Southeast, and they actually sell this when it comes out at probably about 16.99 a bottle. But
Mhm.
then, like around Christmas or Super Bowl, they will mark this down to about 9.99 a bottle, and it'll
That's a
be
great deal.
gone. Because like they just look at the date on it and they're like, oh, this has been sitting on the shelf, and we gotta. It's like sour cream or milk or
Yeah.
something. Like it's gonna go bad, you know.
Here, Costco is the best. If you go to Costco about probably a month after they first drop, they're down to $11.49 a bottle. So, which
Really? But
that's not
do you
bad
buy
price.
just one bottle, or you gotta buy a whole case?
No, you can buy one bottle, or you can buy a case. Like I normally, and it's my great expense every year, is I will grab one case of standard Bourbon County and put it behind the bar, and like we'll drink it and we'll try last year's and all this kind of stuff like that. But like if I have a particular vintage that I like 2022, if I find more of those laying around, I have to admit, like I buy them and I put them
Yeah.
away.
Oh,
And I hope for sale.
Speaking of Publix, I also got all those Hardywood Christmas beers. They did a mix pack this year where you got like the gingerbread stout, the porter, the fluffy, and the Christmas morning. Because I bought it brand new, like around Thanksgiving. So it's 8 beers in a case for I think it was about $30. But Publix, the supermarket chain, was also carrying it, and they had it in their clearance section like a week ago for about like 21 or 22.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you can get those in New York, but like those are really good Christmas stouts. And so I drank one the other day, and the problem is like coffee and chocolate will kind of drop pretty quickly, but the ginger will hang in there forever.
Mhm.
So it just depends on how sensitive you are to ginger or not. Because like I'm really sensitive to ginger. So to me, a lot of those beers are like ginger bombs, but they're
Mhm.
still really good. So
No, I added them
anyway,
to my list for stuff to look for, so we'll have to keep an eye.
yeah, if you can get Hardywood, I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, like I
They
said.
have bourbon barrel variants that come in those stubby red stripe
Mhm.
bottles.
Yeah, it's on my list of another brewery that I need to look at. That's the other problem with this is there's always another brewery you have to go and
Yeah,
examine,
I
Like,
found
there's
them.
always.
I found them on Tavor last year, and now that we can just get it at the supermarket or Total Wine, I'm like, oh my god, this is awesome.
I have to say I'm a fan of Total Wine because they really do bring in, at least by me, they bring in a lot of variation in the beer selection. Stuff that even though my local distributors are really, really good, like
Mm,
Total Wine always has something that I did not expect to find there. So,
yeah,
and the price it's acceptable. It's not over the top. It's not, super cheap, but it's something that you can justify spending. So,
yeah. Well,
yeah.
I know you gotta hard out because you gotta go to bed, and actually I gotta
Yeah,
go to
I'm
bed.
sorry about that, man. Because again, I've been enjoying the conversation, but like it is Wednesday night, and the kids are
Yeah,
going to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at 7:30 tomorrow morning.
yeah.
So,
All right, well, let everybody know where they can find you. I will plug your YouTube, obviously, Instagram. Are you on Twitter, Facebook?
it's funny. I am on Instagram and I am on YouTube, and the YouTube channel is End of the Day Beer Review. My Instagram channel, which I have to be better at, I have to admit, is also. Hold on one second. Sorry. Is also End of the Day Beer Review. And I've been putting up pictures of what I've been doing, but I wasn't getting the feedback from Instagram that I was looking for, so I've sort of fallen slightly astray with that. I'm gonna come back to Instagram in more detail, but yeah, I'm pretty much just YouTube and Instagram, and really more YouTube because when I crack open a new beer, I like being behind the bar and just talking about it. So
Yeah. All right. Well, be sure to check out Rich's channel. Links to everything in the description or show notes or whatever. And we'll see you next week. All right. Cheers.
Excellent. Take care.
Yep. Thanks.
Yeah, hey, it was a lot of fun. Listen, man, you're ever in New York, you let me know. The bar is open, and the Bourbon
Well,
County back there. I'll crack a couple of really, really.
I'm in New York State, but I'm still
You're up.
3, 4, 5 hours from you.
Yeah. If you're ever downstate, the invitation is there, man. So, and I appreciate it. So, but yeah, this was a lot of fun. So,
Yeah.
but I am gonna go pass out so I can get ready for the morning.
All right.
All right. Take care, man.